or Part 5. The chart illustrates that there are 8 passages where the Septuagint translator has taken the language of divine plurality and rendered it as angels. But the chart indicates that there are more places where the Septuagint translator decided otherwise, preferring a more literal equivalent. Some of those instances are among the most frequently cited passages by scholars seeking to argue that the Hebrew Bible preserves vestiges of polytheism. If Jews of the Second Temple period were concerned that such language might be taken as polytheism, it would make little sense to leave passages like these intact, undisguised as angels. The unevenness of what we find shows that the Septuagint cannot be regarded as proof for a campaign to erase polytheistic language and downgrade instances of divine plurality to angels. The argument that the Septuagint sought to eliminate polytheistic language gets even weaker when one investigates the text-critical data for the 8 passages that render plural Elim or Elohim and B'nai Elim Elohim with angeloi. Of the 8 instances noted above where the translator decided to use angeloi, there are variant Septuagint manuscript readings preserving the more literalistic rendering in half of them. Note, for angels of God in Job 1:6 and 2:1, the Greek text of Aquila reads sons of God, hui huioi theou and hui huioi tu theou, respectively. Aquila and Theodotion also have sons of God in place of all my angels in Job 38:7. Lastly, for before the angels in the Septuagint's Psalm 137:1, Aquila and the heptapla column E have before the gods, and nanti theon. Endnote. This again indicates the lack of a theological concern with the Hebrew terminology within the literate Jewish community. It may be the case that a few Septuagint translators preferred angels to gods or sons of God, but the data show that many had no such concern. Vocabulary of the heavenly host in the Dead Sea Scrolls. The view of many scholars that Jewish writers concerned about the language of divine plurality leveled the vocabulary to angels is dealt an even more severe blow when we come to the Dead Sea Scrolls. One would never know that upon reading statements such as Fletcher Lewis's. There are various Old Testament texts which speak of many gods, Elohim. However, at least by the turn of the era, these Elohim were regarded as God's angelic host. This can be seen in particular in the Dead Sea Scrolls, where Elohim or Elim is a common way of referring to angels. This statement is erroneous. The data of the Dead Sea Scrolls, in fact, point us toward the opposite conclusion. I have refuted this idea at length elsewhere in an article on divine plurality in the Dead Sea Scrolls. In the remaining space in this chapter, I'll summarize that refutation. The Dead Sea Scrolls contain a number of references to the divine counsel of the Hebrew Bible. Those references utilize the same terminology for the counsel we conveyed in Chapter 1, a counsel of Elohim or Elim. There are no instances in the scrolls of council terminology that includes the Hebrew term for angels, malachim. This omission is curious to say the least if, as Fletcher Lewis and many others suggest, there was a theological trend in Second Temple Judaism to avoid allegedly polytheistic language, and these council members were transformed to angels. According to Abeg's authoritative database on the Qumran sectarian manuscripts, there are 106 instances of plural Elim in the scrolls. Note, the label sectarian manuscripts designates non-biblical texts among the Dead Sea Scrolls that dealt with the rules, practices, and biblical interpretations associated with a Jewish sect from the Second Temple period. The identity of the sect is debated. Endnote. The phrase B'nai Elim occurs 5 times. Nowhere are these terms negative or polemic, and nowhere are these terms accompanied by malachim to make the point that the Elim are to be understood as angels. The word Elohim occurs over 500 times in the scrolls, 70 of which are semantically plural. These instances are not references to idols. It's evident that the Qumran authors, in concert with the Hebrew Bible, considered them spirit beings based on phrases like spirits of the gods, ruchot Elohim, and spirits of the living gods, Ruchot Elohim Chayim. As I wrote in my study of the scrolls for the language of divine plurality, there are nearly 180 instances of explicit divine plurality in the sectarian Qumran scrolls, a number far greater than in the Hebrew Bible. Many of these instances are found in unequivocal divine council contexts of the type associated with the allegedly polytheistic stage of the religion of biblical Israel. These gods are found in the heavenly temple heights praising God and serving Him. Angels, Malakim, are seldom found in these contexts. When they are, there is no clear instance where Elim, or semantically plural, Elohim, are described as Malakim. The data therefore portray a theological situation quite contrary to what would be expected if Jewish theological thinking was moving away from polytheistic belief toward an intolerant monotheism. To summarize our findings, the vocabulary of Second Temple Jewish literature is quite consistent with that of the Hebrew Bible, even in translation. Despite this consistency, Second Temple Jewish angelology moves beyond the Old Testament in imaginative ways.